Hey everybody, B-Rad here. This is a quick video about finding inner peace and calmness through non-attachment and activating what's known as the observer effect. This can be done pretty quickly. It's pretty powerful. So, here we go. Okay, welcome back. So, before we get started, I have a little disclaimer here. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do, what to believe, any of that stuff. This is just based on my own experiences, as well as millions of others, and definitely derives from Buddhist philosophy and a few other folks that I find their work very valuable. So, as I said earlier, this is about non-attachment and what's called the observer effect, using these principles in order to calm down the body, calm down the mind. Obviously they're connected, calm down the central nervous system. It can be done pretty quickly. So what do I mean by non-attachment? Non-attachment has a lot to do with the ego and also just perception in general, but basically not getting so personally identified with every single thing that crosses your path on a day-to-day basis, I guess you could say. So let's zoom in on that for a minute and what I mean by that. I'm going to reference a guy's YouTube channel that I love and I've learned a lot from. It's helped me a lot. His name's Abke. I'll link the video I'm referring to at the bottom in the description, so check that out. He describes the ego as the mental activity of identifying, kind of a short and sweet definition there, or attaching to anything that's put in front of it. So this can be amplified greatly by the amount of what I would call unresolved chapters, unresolved situations in your life. Could be going back 5, 10, 15, 20 years, all the way back to childhood, whatever. Things that you that are unresolved, that chapter was not closed. So therefore, sometimes just completely out of the blue, you may start replaying situations in your mind of some of those unresolved situations. So how you wish you would have said this instead of that, or done this or done that. So therefore they're unresolved. They can trigger you from all kinds of stuff. A smell, a song, something someone says, whatever just kind of happened. That can amplify what we're talking about here as far as the ego identifying with everything or attaching it to any situation that you find yourself in the present moment. You usually don't see it coming. It just kind of happens from what you're doing, if it's at work or just interacting with people wherever, it can just sort of come up. So a good way to do that, or to not have that so intense and to get what we're talking about here, is the observer effect. The observer effect, Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about. I believe in the power of now or a new earth or both. Very effective. It's kind of like the visualizing a viewpoint that you're simply observing yourself from outside of yourself. And of course, that sounds kind of weird. Some people are like, what the heck do you mean? It's like envisioning someone else observing you, or you observing someone else. If you can somehow, in your mind, pull yourself out of yourself and observe yourself the way you're acting and thinking and reacting from someone else's point of view, or like I said, if you're observing someone else, having that viewpoint, so you're not so attached to yourself getting all worked up or whatever over a certain situation that's in front of you. You're just sort of observing it. Kind of like you're extraterrestrial or an alien just visiting this planet, and you don't have anything that you've really attached to yet, so you're sort of observing everything. That can help you a lot. It helps basically broaden your scope of how far you're looking out, kind of like this visual here.
Okay, so this is a visual here showcasing my incredible artistic abilities. Basically, this is an example of not a broad view, more of a narrow view. The adjectives here basically, it's a possibility of what can happen if you have too many unresolved chapters going on in your life and your energy fields, like we talked about a minute ago, combined with just being unfortunately what most of us in this country get into the situation of, where you're working so much, it's all you really have time to do is work, pay bills, put food on the table. Oh my God, especially if you have kids, mortgages and stuff like that, you don't really have a whole lot of time to look into stuff that's outside the box, looking over the walls of the maze, so to speak. So especially when most of us are gotten to the place of working more hours for less money and stuff like that. But combining that with just a lot of unresolved stuff in your past can have the possibility of having this kind of outlook on a day-to-day basis without even realizing it. So therefore having what I call a quote narrow scope of how you perceive life. So you see some of these adjectives just like, bills, what am I going to do about this, food, lack, or like once I get there, life will be great. Always kind of like living for the destination rather than the journey. By the way, I don't exclude myself from this scenario at all. I've lived most of my life like this, with moments of clearing it out here and there and peeking out and getting a broader scope and then getting back into the narrow scope without even realizing it. But then, growing up, especially if you're my age or close by, when we were kids, when we grew up, we were heavily taught, go out there and compete with one another, and you got to have more stuff than everybody else to be cool, more stuff than your neighbors, more stuff than your friends. So this kind of leads to needing more stuff on a subconscious level. Consume, consume, consume. You can get jealous easily. There's a classic saying that, if you're living in the past of regrets and what you haven't done or wish you would have done, said this, said that, you can have a lot of anger because of the regret. Anger is synonymous with fear, but fear goes more into like the anxiety realm of living in the future instead of the past. So in the future, it's more like what I call the what if scenarios. Like, what if this happens? What if this doesn't happen? What if I do this and this doesn't work out the way I want? All that kind of stuff. So that all stuff like that can definitely clog your scope, your field of vision, and too much of that stuff can definitely have the possibility of dominating your field of vision and therefore your view of the world, and then more importantly, therefore how you act and react in the world. So all this stuff, you can kind of think of it like temporary internet files or cache memory. It's not that anything's wrong with you or us or me for having this stuff going on. It's just the way this world is that we all agreed to experience. But comparing all this stuff that's clogging up your field there to like temporary internet files, sometimes you just got to clear it all out. There's many ways to do that, but you just got to clear it out, and then you'll basically be able to much more easily broaden your scope and think about things way further down the road than just like the obvious paying bills and survival and all that kind of stuff. And once you do start clearing out some of that old stuff, your worldview starts to broaden actually fairly quickly. So here is another visual showcasing my artistic abilities. This is a broadened view. This is after you've cleared out some of that stuff. This is after you've gotten rid of or cleared out some of those temporary internet files that we were describing. So your worldview starts to broaden. Instead of thinking of all the day-to-day tasks and thinking of lack mentality, you start to think of abundance everywhere. It doesn't mean you just avoid your responsibilities and so forth. You still got to pay bills, still got to take care of your stuff, but you do it in more of a positive way. Like, yeah, man, I got this. Check, got this, got this. But when your worldview is much more broader and you're looking much further down the road of the life you're living, you start to have other adjectives in your field like oneness and gratitude and respect and calmness and stillness and joy. And of course, joy comes from within, not from without. Things like, wow, I didn't see this before. Oh my God, this is amazing. Or there's a little mantra I put up there in front of this person's eyes that I personally say a lot, like when I'm hiking especially. I'll just say, I am here right now. I am not in the past. I am not in the future. I am here right now while I'm looking at the trees and the bushes going by and so forth. And it definitely is kind of like a walking mindfulness exercise that helps a lot. But it just really affects your day-to-day life before you even know it, really, once again, because it's a repetitious habit. It doesn't mean you'll clear out the junk, the temporary internet files, the cache memory, so to speak, once and be done for the rest of your life. It's kind of a challenge of this life. You will have to do this periodically, but the more that you're like used to doing it becomes a natural thing, you can do it a lot easier and faster. There's several ways of doing it, like meditation, various ceremonies, but really the observer effect, like we've been talking about this whole video, is a great way of doing it. It happens very fast. Just from trying to exercise that view of the way you perceive the world, and if you can view yourself once again like you're viewing yourself from outside of yourself, bam, the observer effect starts to take place, and then therefore your worldview starts to open up extremely fast. It's pretty amazing how fast that transition can happen, actually. But that pretty much wraps up this visual here, and we'll get to the next segment here. I hope you enjoyed that.
So as I said at the very beginning, all of this stuff is a lot easier if the body and the mind become calm. Several ways of doing that. I'm going to go over one very quick breathing exercise that'll calm you down very fast. It's from a Buddhist Zen master, very well known, named Thich Nhat Hanh, ThichNhathanH. I've always pronounced his name wrong, but I think I finally got it pretty much right. Thich Nhat Hanh. Martin Luther King Jr. nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize, I believe, in 1967. The breathing exercise comes from this book right here. It is amazing. Once again, his name is Thich Nhat Hanh, this guy right here.
So this is a good picture of Thich Nhat Hanh. He's amazing. He's a Buddhist monk that's totally dedicated his life to being of service to others. He's a Zen mindfulness teacher and master and author of many, many books, such as Being Peace, Living Buddha, Living Christ, The Energy of Prayer, Peace is Every Step, You Are Here, and the one that we're talking about is called Happiness. I apologize, earlier in the frame where I held up the book, I didn't realize you couldn't see the cover of the book because of the glare in the camera. So this is it. It's called Happiness. He goes over the exercise we're about to go over, and I'll hold up the book again in a minute, under chapter 1 called Daily Practices.
So the breathing exercise is really simple. It can be done in a matter of minutes. It's helped me a whole lot. It's helped millions of people, if not billions, all over the world. It's talked about once again in this book at the very beginning, just under daily practices. But basically, you want to breathe in and out of your nose. Once again, in through the nose, out through the nose. It's very simple, not a lot to think about and concentrate on really hard or anything like that. But basically, you just sit there and you don't have to have some kind of extreme concentration on rhythm or anything. But when you breathe in, you tell yourself in your mind, I know I'm breathing in. And then when you breathe out of your nose, you tell yourself in your mind, I know I'm breathing out. And don't say anything else in your mind except for that. So on the in breath, maybe a few seconds and the same duration out or whatever. So once again, you're breathing in, you're saying in your mind, I know I'm breathing in, and as you breathe out, you say, I know I'm breathing out. And the idea is if you're just saying that in your mind in conjunction with your breath, all the other mind chatter and things that come in, they kind of go away. And before you know it, you're calmer, the whole central nervous system's calmer, the body and mind are calm. It works. It's amazing. I strongly advise trying this. It's really good. So that breathing exercise can be done anywhere. It doesn't have to be just sitting down in your room in the morning, although that is a great way and time of the day to do it. I do that pretty much every morning before I stretch and do a little morning meditation. But you can do it standing up, walking. You can do it at work, anywhere. And before you speak in front of a group, really helps, especially for me personally. Probably a lot of others too. But it helps induce that state of non-attachment, of not getting so attached to everything that happens and comes in your path on your day-to-day basis. Now, sometimes people get a little confused because non-attachment can be kind of synonymous with not setting high expectations. So I've talked about this with friends and stuff and family before. Waiting for this truck to go by here. And of course, when I say, you may want to be careful setting really high expectations, going places you have or situations you're about to get into, and so forth. And non-attachment is kind of synonymous with that. So a lot of times people will say, well, what do you mean? Does that mean like I shouldn't? Are you saying you shouldn't set goals and you should never plan anything? It doesn't mean it doesn't. So no, the answer is no. It does not mean to not set goals or to not make plans or anything. Of course, you should set plans and have fun and set goals. As far as the expectations thing, though, it can be dangerous, but I'll let you decide for yourself. That is kind of in the same school of thought as all this philosophy. If you set very high expectations, say if you're going to go meet someone for the first time, it might be like a date or something, or like a new job you're about to go to your first day. that you already, went through the interview process and got the new job or whatever, or you're going to move into a new spot or something like that. A lot of times you're so excited about it or whatever, so you'll have a mental image of what it's going to be like in your mind, and like, this is going to be great, it's going to be amazing, and set all these expectations of what that's going to be. And so what can happen is, even if those expectations are met like to 80-90%, it can still bum you out if it's not exactly the way you visualize it in your mind. So there is a little danger there. But no, it doesn't mean to not set plans or goals or anything. But if you don't set tremendously high expectations before going into a new venture, then you get there, and no matter what, you're more into a state of acceptance of your current situation or the present moment. So you're more accepting to what's going on. So, and you'll probably have in the back of your mind a little voice, if it is a challenging situation, instead of getting triggered, saying in the back of your head, like, well, what can I learn from this? Acceptance is a huge key word in all of this, like accepting the present moment you're in, no matter what the situation is, because you've got that observer effect going on. So it's very, very helpful, I find, and like I said, millions of others do too. So what it means ultimately is having the viewpoint of observing life rather than always feeling like you have to control it, because you're not so attached to everything. So that's pretty big. So once again, the ultimate thing we're talking about here with the observer effect and non-attachment is you get to the point of a default viewpoint. You have the viewpoint, again, of observing life rather than feeling like you always have to control it. Doesn't mean you don't engage yourself in it. It means that you're more likely to have fun doing it, because you're not getting so attached to every single thing. Once again, the ego tends to identify a control mechanism or it wants to anything put in front of it. So the more you install or activate the observer effect and get into a state of non-attachment, and the breathing exercise, like I said, that can be done in seconds anywhere. That can all together work together to create a calmer state of the body, and therefore be more in the present moment. And therefore, being in that present moment more often on a regular basis can help you live a much more calmer and more fulfilling life, because you're more in the present moment all the time, rather than being on a constant ride inside your mind of living in the past or viewing things in the past or possible future, the other scenario. You're more here right now. Where this kind of leads to, because of the observer effect, is before you know it, you get to, and once again, kind of a default, it just becomes kind of like repetitious muscle memory in a way. You get to a place of letting life and experiences live through you rather than living life and having to control it, if that makes any sense. You still engage in life, of course, you still have fun, but it tends to get to more of a positive viewpoint and perspective, and sort of a selfless way of like, how can I help, how can I be of service in this situation, and so forth. So all this can really, really help, I think, personally, through experience, especially, God, after the past year and a half we've all experienced on Earth here. Good gracious. So this is pretty crucial. I think, in my opinion, it can greatly help, once again, to live a calmer and more fulfilling life through non-attachment and activating what is called the observer effect. You start to realize that you're not your thoughts. You're the infinite awareness behind your thoughts, or viewing your thoughts. You're the I am presence, living life through the body that you're in right now. So if you do that, it's almost like, this may sound weird, but it's almost like a being like kind of pulls you up and out into the upper atmosphere, so you can almost like see the Earth, like you're in the upper like stratosphere or ionosphere, and you're kind of viewing the Earth from outside of it and seeing all this human activity all over it and so forth, and just realizing it's still all this earthbound stuff. Like there's so much else going on, you know. But once again, I try hard not to go off on too many tangents, but the whole point here is to help possibly anyone and everyone viewing this to live a calmer and more fulfilling life because of what we just talked about. It kind of puts you in the default state of being in the present moment rather than in the past or living in the future in your mind. So I hope that helps. Thank you so much. That wraps up this video, and we'll see you next time. Many blessings, much love.